Well, moving on today to our Parenting SOS. Yeah, we wanted to find out how schools handle counseling kids during a crisis like we've seen in Las Vegas this week.
Going to school and going to a concert or going out in public. So at this point, just only being 6 years old, I think I don't even want to talk to him about it.
Obviously, hearing from a local parent there, what you say depends so much on the age of your kids, of course. For that, we turn to Leslie Rogers from Beaverton Public Schools. She helps the district assist kids in these crisis situations and with crisis problems. It was something that came up in our house yesterday before the boys left for school. They wanted to know why I hadn't gone into work yet. I hadn't gone in because we were doing a different deal in the mornings. And she said, "Are you going to tell them?" I said, "I'm not ready to do that right now. We didn't talk about it. They're 10. I wasn't sure if it was the right place." At what age is yesterday's situation appropriate to talk about with kids?
You know, the hard part is that your house, you probably had a lot of control over what their media exposure was. But once they get to school at age 10, it's very likely that people were talking about it, not even adults, that the kids were talking about it.
Some kids probably went to school having seen the coverage and started talking.
And I doubt that that's true with younger kids, ages 6 to 7. But as kids get older, I think it's hard to limit that. So I think the important part is just to create space as a parent with kids, say over the age of 7, to just ask, right? Did you hear about something today? Did you want to talk about it? And then, you know, based on the developmental age of the student, your child, to just use really simple language and language that they can understand, right? You know, for students the age of 10, it could be, if it's your child, to say, something really terrible happened today. You know, there was a bad person and he killed people, and you know, the world is basically a very good place and it's a very safe place, but these bad things do happen. And ask if they have questions, and they may not. You know, students oftentimes don't have questions. We know at school they want routine and predictability, right? So it's always trying to balance that, like creating space where kids can talk about their feelings, but also really keeping it pretty routine and structured. Our counselors in those settings at school are really on the front lines of that. You know, teachers can identify students that are struggling and then send them to our school counselors to talk about it, and they do an amazing job.
As a district, when events happen, you know, hundreds of miles, thousands of miles away, do you hear from people wondering what to do in the classroom?
Sometimes, and I hate to say this, but in the last few years it's become so common that I think that that schools are starting to really gather their tools and resources. The first few times it happened, you know,
for example, yesterday though?
Yes. So I did get a couple calls from schools yesterday. Do you have any tips? Do you have any guidance? We talked about handling grief in the classroom. We talked about routine and predictability, but also what I noticed was just this kind of vigilance, like really watching, being really just hyper aware of what's going on with students. And I heard that there were some disruptions at schools, that, you know, kids just seemed a little bit off.
Uneasy.
Right? Uneasy, yes. And, you know, we know with kids that comes out kind of sideways. It may not come out as, I'm upset about the violence that happened in Las Vegas.
The images, to me, you know, whether you had that conversation with your 10, 11, 12-year-old, I agree. It's actually not a bad thing to have that conversation about something bad happened yesterday, but I couldn't bring myself to let them see any of those images. To me, there is a certain age where you just do not even go down that road, or you try to avoid that at all costs. Would you agree with that? Or is there a certain age, looking at yesterday's situation specifically, is there an age appropriate for seeing something like that?
I think even with adults, they get traumatized by the repeated media exposure. We just don't think that we do. So absolutely. I don't know that any kids, you know, maybe adolescents, it would be okay to watch some of the news coverage because that's the world that they live in, and it's the world that they're soon going to be adults in. And so they need time to process that. But with younger kids, I actually don't think they need exposure to the media coverage at all.
No, it's tough for us to sit there and watch it. I mean, you know, we didn't want to subject anyone to that.
Absolutely.
What about a teenager, 14? I'm speaking from personal experience here. You bring it up. I brought it up as soon as I picked him up from school yesterday. No interest in talking about it expressed. Just the immediate shutdown. Yeah, Ma, I know about it, and doesn't want to go anywhere beyond that. That okay, or do I push on?
I think it's normal, and I think it's also, so we don't want to force them to talk, but I think it's okay to bring it up again. Be like, I'm just checking in. How are you feeling? Any thoughts or feelings come up and really normalize that. I think for a 14-year-old, it's very common to be like, there's nothing much to say about
Sometimes I say, what are you hearing on social media? And then that will open the door. In other
I can see that.
cases it has, but not this one so much. And it may have been that he had seen some of those images. And yeah, so I tried to bring it up again before bed. Again, you know, no interest.
What we tell parents and teachers too is that it could come out all week. It could come out next week. You know, it could come out, you know, that those feelings are normal, whether it's confusion, distress, anger, concentration problems. Even if kids don't directly relate it to the trauma, we know that these things do come up, and it can oftentimes take several days.
Creates fear, understandably so.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for coming in
You're
today.
welcome.
Really appreciate it.